The United States Congress is the primary lawmaking body. It writes and passes legislation, controls the federal budget, confirms appointments, and provides oversight of the executive branch. Members of the House serve 2-year terms. Senators serve 6-year terms. All federal legislation requires passage by both chambers. The architecture was designed for deliberation and compromise. What it produces is something different. The 2-year House term creates a permanent campaign cycle. Members begin fundraising for their next election almost immediately after winning the current one. The committee system concentrates power in senior members and committee chairs, creating structural bottlenecks where legislation dies without a vote. The Senate filibuster allows 41 senators to block legislation indefinitely, a mechanism designed for extended debate that became a routine veto used to prevent votes from occurring at all. The result is a legislature structurally optimized for obstruction rather than legislation. The root cause is 3 structural conditions operating simultaneously. The first is the adversarial incentive loop. Members are elected in winner-take-all districts, funded by partisan donors, and evaluated by partisan primary electorates. The incentive at every stage rewards confrontation over cooperation. A legislator who compromises is vulnerable to a primary challenge. A legislator who obstructs can fundraise on the obstruction. The architecture rewards the behavior that produces gridlock. The second is the minority veto. The Senate filibuster as currently practiced does not require extended debate. It requires only the threat of extended debate. 41 senators representing as little as 11% of the U.S. population can block legislation supported by 59 senators representing 89% of the population. The precision filter finds the exploit surface immediately. Extended debate is not defined with a measurable standard. 41 senators can invoke it without saying a single word on the floor. The third is structural lag. Congressional terms were set in 1789. The committee system accumulated power over 2 centuries without a systematic review of whether the accumulation served the legislative function. The Alignment Audit finds drift throughout. Mechanisms designed for deliberation have become mechanisms for obstruction, and the rules have not been updated to reflect what they actually do. One example is the filibuster's transformation. From 1789 to 1837, there was no formal filibuster rule at all. The 1917 cloture rule required 2/3 of senators to end debate. The 1975 reform reduced the threshold to 60 votes. But the 1970s also introduced the 2-track system, allowing the Senate to move to other business while a filibuster technically continued, which transformed the filibuster from an exhausting last resort into a routine procedural tool. The Alignment Audit traces the drift precisely. The mechanism designed to protect minority deliberation became a mechanism for routine obstruction. The drift happened in stages, each one small enough to seem reasonable. The cumulative effect transformed the institution. The proposed fix is 3 structural patches. The first is term limits on committee chairs. No member chairs the same committee for more than a defined number of terms. The power concentration that creates structural bottlenecks breaks. Legislation that would otherwise die in committee reaches a vote. The second is filibuster reform. Restore the requirement for actual extended debate with a defined time limit after which a vote must occur. The minority retains the ability to slow and scrutinize legislation. It loses the ability to prevent a vote indefinitely. The exploit surface closes, extended debate gets a measurable standard. The third is ranked choice voting in congressional primaries. The incentive to appeal exclusively to the most partisan primary electorate is reduced. A candidate must build a broader coalition to win nomination. The adversarial incentive loop weakens at its source. Here is what optimized looks like. A legislature where the incentive architecture rewards building coalitions rather than performing confrontation, where the minority can slow and scrutinize legislation but cannot indefinitely prevent a vote, where committee power does not concentrate in ways that allow single members to block legislation from reaching the floor, where the exploit ledger tracks every identified gap between the legislature's stated purpose, passing laws that reflect the will of the represented electorate and what it actually produces. Fix the incentives. Restore the vote. Break the bottleneck. I am the system architect. Next, the presidency. The the single most powerful office in the federal government, its incentive architecture, and what the DSI finds when it audits how the office actually functions.